I'm 29M, and I've been financially independent since I was 18. Not because I wanted to be, but because I had no choice. My family made it very clear that I wasn't a priority the second I could legally be on my own. I have an older sister, 33F, and a younger brother, 26M. My sister was always the golden child. She could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She got everything handed to her, from a car on her 16th birthday to a fully paid-for college education. My younger brother was the baby of the family. Even as an adult, my parents still treat him like a kid who needs to be taken care of. Meanwhile, I was the invisible child. It wasn't outright abuse, but it was neglect. No one in my family really cared about what I wanted or needed. They only noticed me when they needed something done. When I was a kid, I was expected to shovel snow, clean up, and help out with whatever needed fixing around the house. If something broke, I was the one who had to figure it out. I didn't get an allowance like my siblings did, but if I wanted something, my parents told me to get a job. So I did. At 14, I started doing odd jobs, mowing lawns, delivering newspapers, anything to make some money. By 16, I had a part-time job after school. Meanwhile, my sister had her whole life funded by my parents, and my brother didn't have to lift a finger. When I graduated high school, my parents told me they couldn't afford to send me to college. Not a surprise. I already knew they were bad with money. My dad was always chasing some new business opportunity that never worked out, and my mom covered for him by moving money around and pretending everything was fine. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for financial help. I worked full-time while going to school. It was brutal. There were nights I barely got any sleep. But I did it. I graduated with debt, paid it off, and got a good job in tech. Now I make six figures. You'd think my family would be proud of me. They aren't. In fact, they don't even acknowledge my success. They don't call, they don't check in. I don't get birthday messages. If I didn't reach out, I could probably go years without hearing from them. But whenever they need money, that's when I exist. At first I helped. I was making good money, and I thought maybe this was my chance to finally be part of the family. So when my mom called asking for help with some unexpected medical bills, I sent the money. No big deal. Then it was house repairs. Then my sister's car broke down. Then my brother needed help with rent. The worst part, they never even said thank you. Just a simple thanks over text, if even that. No invites to family gatherings, no acknowledgement of my birthday, just more requests for money. A few months ago, my sister had a huge destination wedding. I wasn't invited, but my mom texted me a week before asking if I could send $5,000 to help with the costs. That was it for me. I showed the text to my girlfriend Emily, 27F. She was the first person to point out what I already knew but didn't want to admit. My family doesn't actually care about me. They only care about what I can do for them. I didn't respond to my mom's text, and for the first time, I ignored every money request after that. That's when the guilt tripping started. My mom bombarded me with texts, saying she was so disappointed in how I was treating them. My sister, who never talks to me, suddenly messaged me about how family helps family. My dad claimed I was letting the family fall apart because I refused to help. And my younger brother, who was always somewhat neutral, sent a long text blaming me for making our parents stress out. I was done. I blocked my dad and my sister. I kept my mom unblocked, just in case of an emergency, but I ignored her messages. That's when I found out they had a family meeting about me. Apparently, they sat down to figure out how to handle the fact that I was cutting them off. My aunt reached out telling me I should just help them out a little, since I'm doing well. My sister posted some passive-aggressive nonsense on Facebook about how some people forget where they came from. My dad had always used manipulation as a weapon. When I was a kid, he'd guilt me into doing chores, saying he'd take away my food if I didn't. When I got older, he used it on his business partners, stretching the truth to make himself look like the victim. I should have known he'd eventually try it on me in the worst way possible. Luckily, my boss handled it professionally. He called me into his office, showed me the email, and reassured me that they had already dismissed it as nonsense. We looked into it, and obviously it holds no merit. He said, "Just let us know if this continues so we can take the appropriate steps." That's when I seriously started considering legal action. The thing is, I don't feel guilty about cutting them off. Not anymore. For years I let them use me, thinking that maybe, just maybe, if I helped enough, they would finally treat me like part of the family. But it was never about family. It was about money. Now they're panicking because they lost their backup plan. They're scrambling, trying to guilt me into helping, but I'm done. For the first time in my life, I'm not looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next request. I'm just waiting to see what they'll do next. And I have a feeling this is only the beginning. For the first time in my life, I ignored my family's money requests. It started small. My mom sent a text asking for help with some bills. No details, no explanation, just an expectation that I'd send money like always. I left it on read. A few hours later, another message came in. Then another. By the end of the day, I had 5 texts from her, all worded slightly differently but with the same demand. Send money. Then my sister started calling. She never calls, ever. But that day my phone rang nonstop. Missed call after missed call, until I finally put it on Do Not Disturb. She left a voicemail, her voice sickly sweet, at first saying she just wanted to talk. Then another one, her tone sharper, something about how family helps family. The last one, pure anger. She was furious that I was ignoring her. That's when my mom escalated. A long, dramatic text about how she was so disappointed in me, how she didn't raise me to be like this, how she sacrificed everything for me, and this is how I repay her. Then my younger brother chimed in. He had always been the neutral one, but not this time. He sent a long text way longer than anything he'd ever written me before, saying I was being selfish, that our parents were stressed, that I was making things harder for them when I could easily help. It was clear they were all in on it together. Then my dad sent an email. Not a text, an email. He went on and on about how he was trying to keep the family together and that I was making it impossible. Then he threw in the real reason for the message. He had a new business venture that would fix everything, but he just needed a little help to get started. Same story, different excuse. Then my mom hit me with the ultimate guilt trip. She sent one more text, saying I gave birth to you. The least you could do is help us when we need you. That was it for me. I blocked my dad, then my sister. I left my mom unblocked, just in case of an emergency, but I muted her messages. For a few days, things were quiet. Then I found out they had a family meeting about me. Apparently, they got together to figure out how to handle me. I only found out because my aunt texted me, saying she understood things were complicated, but that I should just help them out a little since I was doing well. I didn't respond. Then came the smear campaign. It started with my sister on Facebook, a post about how some people forget where they came from once they get successful. The comments were full of people agreeing, saying things like so true and it's sad when family turns their back on you. A couple of our cousins joined in. My aunt reached out telling me I should just help them out a little, since I'm doing well. My sister posted some passive-aggressive nonsense on Facebook about how some people forget where they came from. My dad had always used manipulation as a weapon. When I was a kid, he'd guilt me into doing chores, saying he'd take away my food if I didn't. When I got older, he used it on his business partners, stretching the truth to make himself look like the victim. I should have known he'd eventually try it on me in the worst way possible. Luckily, my boss handled it professionally. He called me into his office, showed me the email, and reassured me that they had already dismissed it as nonsense. We looked into it, and obviously it holds no merit. He said, just let us know if this continues so we can take the appropriate steps. That's when I seriously started considering legal action. The thing is, I don't feel guilty about cutting them off, not anymore. For years I let them use me, thinking that maybe, just maybe if I helped enough, they would finally treat me like part of the family. But it was never about family. It was about money. Now they're panicking because they lost their backup plan. They're scrambling, trying to guilt me into helping, but I'm done. For the first time in my life, I'm not looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next request. I'm just waiting to see what they'll do next. And I have a feeling this is only the beginning. For the first time in my life, I ignored my family's money requests. It started small. My mom sent a text asking for help with some bills. No details, no explanation, just an expectation that I'd send money like always. I left it on read. A few hours later, another message came in. Then another. By the end of the day, I had 5 texts from her, all worded slightly differently but with the same demand. Send money. Then my sister started calling. She never calls, ever. But that day my phone rang nonstop. Missed call after missed call, until I finally put it on Do Not Disturb. She left a voicemail, her voice sickly sweet, at first saying she just wanted to talk. Then another one, her tone sharper, something about how family helps family. The last one, pure anger. She was furious that I was ignoring her. That's when my mom escalated. A long dramatic text about how she was so disappointed in me, how she didn't raise me to be like this, how she sacrificed everything for me, and this is how I repay her. Then my younger brother chimed in. He had always been the neutral one, but not this time. He sent a long text way longer than anything he'd ever written me before, saying I was being selfish, that our parents were stressed, that I was making things harder for them when I could easily help. It was clear they were all in on it together. Then my dad sent an email. Not a text, an email. He went on and on about how he was trying to keep the family together and that I was making it impossible. Then he threw in the real reason for the message. He had a new business venture that would fix everything, but he just needed a little help to get started. Same story, different excuse. Then my mom hit me with the ultimate guilt trip. She sent one more text, saying I gave birth to you. The least you could do is help us when we need you. That was it for me. I blocked my dad, then my sister. I left my mom unblocked, just in case of an emergency, but I muted her messages. For a few days, things were quiet. Then I found out they had a family meeting about me. Apparently, they got together to figure out how to handle me. I only found out because my aunt texted me, saying she understood things were complicated, but that I should just help them out a little since I was doing well. I didn't respond. Then came the smear campaign. It started with my sister on Facebook, a post about how some people forget where they came from once they get successful. The comments were full of people agreeing, saying things like so true and it's sad when family turns their back on you. A couple of our cousins joined in. Then, my mom posted something vague about how a mother's love is unconditional, but it's sad when it's not returned. At that point, even mutual friends started reaching out. Old high school friends, extended family, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all messaging me, asking why I was hurting my family. Emily was the only one who saw right through it. She told me this was exactly what manipulative people do when they lose control. They can't force me to send money, so now they're trying to destroy my reputation. She told me to go no contact. For real this time. Then my dad made one last desperate attempt. Another email. This time the subject line was, "We're about to lose the house." A long dramatic message about how if I didn't step up, the family home would be gone, that it was my responsibility to prevent that from happening, that if I let this happen, I'd be the reason for their downfall. I replied with one sentence, "I am not responsible for your financial decisions." Then I blocked him, and that was when the real fallout began. Ignoring them didn't work. Blocking them didn't work. Now, they were showing up at my door. It was early in the morning when I heard banging on my apartment door. Not knocking, banging. Loud, impatient, nonstop. I knew before even looking who it was. I opened the door and there she was. My sister. Arms crossed, face already set in that familiar look of entitlement and annoyance. She didn't live anywhere near me, so she had gone out of her way to come here. Before I could say anything, she pushed past me and stepped into my apartment, like she owned the place. I turned around, watching as she looked around, unimpressed, before finally getting to the point. She needed money. This time the excuse was different. She said she was pregnant and that she needed my help. Not just for herself, but for the baby. I didn't even know if it was true. She barely looked at me when she said it, like she was waiting for me to react. To cave in like I always had before. I told her no. She blinked, like she didn't understand the word. "Come on, Jake, don't be ridiculous," she said, forcing a laugh. When I didn't react, her expression shifted. Her voice got sharper, her tone more desperate. Then, when she realized I still wasn't budging, the act started. The forced tears, the exaggerated sobs. And when even that failed, the mask dropped completely, and the real anger took over. First, the tears. Not real ones. Forced, fake little sobs, wiping at her face like she had been wronged. She said I was heartless for turning her away. That I was letting her suffer when I could easily help. That I was abandoning my own blood. When that didn't work, she switched tactics. She brought up the past. She started listing off things that never even happened. How the family had always been there for me. How they had done so much for me. That after everything they had done, the least I could do was return the favor. I told her to leave. She refused. Instead, she threatened to make a scene. Loud enough that neighbors would hear. Loud enough to make things uncomfortable for everyone in the building. She even glanced at the hallway, like she was debating walking outside and causing a public meltdown. I grabbed my phone, told her I'd call the police if she didn't leave. That got her attention. The fake tears stopped immediately. Her face twisted into pure anger. She grabbed her bag, stormed toward the door, then stopped just long enough to spit out a few final insults before leaving. Not even 10 minutes later, I got a voice message. A long rambling rant about how she couldn't believe I was really doing this, that I was selfish, that I was going to regret this when I had no family left. Then, silence. For about a day, then my mom tried a new strategy. She started messaging Emily. It started out innocent. "I just want to talk." Then it turned into guilt tripping, saying she was worried about me, that I was acting out of character, that she just needed Emily to help talk some sense into me. Emily blocked her. Then my dad made his final move.
An email. Again.
This time it wasn't about money. It was a threat. If I didn't help, he was going to call my workplace and tell them I was a terrible person, that I was irresponsible with money, that I wasn't to be trusted. I called a lawyer. I didn't know if my dad would actually follow through, but at this point, I wasn't taking any chances. The lawyer told me what to do if things escalated further, said I could file for a restraining order if the harassment continued. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just dysfunctional family drama anymore. This was harassment, and I was done. That night, my sister posted another Facebook rant. This one was even more dramatic than the last. It was full of vague quotes about how some people abandon family in times of need and how money changes people. The comments were full of people eating it up, saying things like family should always come first, and it's sad when money makes people forget what really matters. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't text. I just watched. And for the first time, I realized they had nothing left. They had tried everything. The guilt trips, the anger, the social media campaign, the workplace threats, the in-person ambush, and none of it had worked. I was completely done with them. For good. Cutting them off wasn't enough. Blocking them wasn't enough. Ignoring them wasn't enough. Now they were taking it public. It started with my sister. One night, she posted a full-blown rant on Facebook. Not just the usual vague quotes about ungrateful family members. This time she went nuclear. She wrote a detailed post, full of straight-up lies. She claimed I had abandoned our parents in their time of need, that they were struggling, sick, and barely getting by, that I was making six figures, living in luxury, while they were suffering. And the worst part, she implied that our parents were dying. There were no details, no actual proof, just vague, emotional manipulation. But people believed it. The comments poured in, dozens of people offering sympathy. People I hadn't talked to in years, old high school friends, distant relatives, even random acquaintances, commenting things like, "This is heartbreaking. I can't believe someone would do this to their own parents. Wow, money really changes people. I always thought he was a good guy, but this is just disgusting. Then my mom joined in. A few hours later, she made her own post. This one was shorter but just as manipulative. Something about how some children are ungrateful no matter how much you sacrifice for them. No names, no details, just enough to make it clear who she was talking about. That's when the messages started. First it was relatives, aunts, cousins, even some family friends, all sending messages about how disappointed they were in me, how I was turning my back on my own blood, how I needed to fix this before it's too late. Then it got worse. Old high school friends started messaging me. People I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. People who knew nothing about my life now but had read my sister's post and decided they needed to give me a moral lecture. Some weren't even aggressive, just nosy, asking if it was true, if my parents were really on the verge of homelessness, if I was really letting them suffer while I lived in luxury. Then Emily's family saw the posts. Her mom called her, concerned. Her sister sent her a screenshot, asking if everything was okay. They didn't believe the posts, but they wanted to make sure Emily was prepared for the drama. And then, my dad took it a step further. He emailed my boss. The email was full of lies. How I was irresponsible with money. How I had a history of stealing from family and couldn't be trusted. How I was a terrible person. It didn't work. My boss called me into his office, laughing. He showed me the email, shook his head and said, "Family drama is the worst." Then he deleted it. That's when I started considering a restraining order, not just blocking them, not just ignoring them. A legal barrier to make sure they couldn't keep harassing me. I had already talked to a lawyer after my dad's workplace threat, and this just confirmed it. I wasn't dealing with normal family drama. I was dealing with harassment. Then, out of nowhere, my younger brother called. He never calls. At first I thought it was just more manipulation, more pressure to get me to fold. But it wasn't. He wasn't calling to attack me. He was calling because, for the first time, he was questioning everything. He asked if I was really cutting them off forever, if I really meant it, if I wasn't coming back. Then he admitted something I never thought I'd hear. He knew our parents had always favored our sister. He knew they never treated me fairly. He knew that I had always been the afterthought. But he was scared. He still depended on them financially. He didn't know how to function without them. And now that I was gone, he was next in line to become their new financial target. I told him the truth. I wasn't going back. I wasn't giving in. And if he wanted to break free, he'd have to do it on his own. Then my mom pulled one last move. She added me to a group chat with her, my dad, my sister, and my brother. And immediately, they all started attacking me at once. Message after message. Some were angry, some were guilt trips, some were begging, but they all wanted the same thing. Money, control, submission. So I sent one last message. A long one. I laid everything out. I told them how I had been neglected for years. How I had never been part of the family, except when they needed something. How I was done being used. Then, I left the group chat, and I blocked them all. A week after I left the family group chat and blocked them all, my inbox was quiet. No more messages. No more calls. No more Facebook rants. It was the longest silence I had ever gotten from them. Then, my mom broke it. An email. A long one. The subject line, "I just want to make things right." She called me her son again. Something she only did when she wanted something. She apologized for if I ever felt neglected, but immediately followed it up with how family should always stick together. She wrote about how hard things had been since I left, how they were all struggling, how she missed me. Then, at the very end of the email, the real reason came out. "Can you at least help us one last time?" She wanted money, even after everything, even after the Facebook rants, the harassment, the workplace stunt. They still thought I'd cave. Meanwhile, my sister was doubling down online. Instead of apologizing, she made another Facebook post, this time about how certain family members are selfish and will regret it when they have no one left. The comments were full of people agreeing, saying things like karma will take care of them. It's always the ones who forget where they came from. Some people get money and suddenly think they're better than everyone else. Emily took one look at my mom's email and the latest Facebook post and didn't even hesitate. She told me exactly what it was. Another manipulation tactic. The next day, my younger brother messaged me. Not an attack, not a demand, just a quiet, hesitant text. He told me things were bad, that our dad was trying to take out another loan because they were running out of money, that he was scared about what would happen if I didn't help. Then, Mom sent another email. This time, she dropped the act. The subject line was our last hope. She said if I didn't help, they would lose the house, that there was no other option left, that it was my fault if they lost everything. She wasn't asking anymore. She was demanding. That was when I realized I didn't feel guilty. For years I had let them treat me like an ATM, like a backup plan for their financial disasters. But they had put themselves in this position, not me. So I sent one final offer. I told them I'd pay for one last thing, therapy, for all of them. Not rent, not debt, not bills, just therapy. That was it. Take it or leave it. My mom refused. She responded almost instantly, furious. She said they didn't need therapy. They just needed me to step up as their son. Then my dad finally snapped. A single text message, full of rage, calling me a selfish traitor who had forgotten his roots, who had turned his back on the people who raised him, who would regret this when I had no family left. I blocked him. Again. Then my younger brother messaged me one last time. He said he understood why I was doing this, that he had always known the family was unfair to me, but he also said he felt stuck, that he didn't know what to do. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. That night, my mom made one last attempt. She sent a picture, an old baby picture of me. Attached was a single message: "You were such a happy baby. What happened?" I responded with 2 words: "I grew up." Then I blocked her too, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. For weeks my family had done everything to paint me as the villain. They tried to guilt trip me, they tried to humiliate me, they tried to destroy my reputation. But now, it was starting to backfire. At first, their Facebook smear campaign seemed to be working. My sister kept posting rants about selfish family members and how money changes people. My mom doubled down with emotional posts about how sad it is when children forget their parents. Then, people started noticing the cracks. It started when some relatives messaged me privately. A couple of aunts, a few cousins. They admitted they had never realized how toxic my family was until now. They had seen the way my mom and sister talked about me online, the way they were so focused on money, and it made them question everything. Then, my sister made a mistake. She posted one thing about how my parents were going to be homeless. Then, the next day, she posted a vacation picture with the caption, "Much needed getaway." People noticed. Some even commented on it. A few asked how she could afford a vacation if our parents were supposedly starving. Others started putting things together. Her lies started unraveling. Then, more messages came in. Old friends. People I hadn't talked to in years. Some of them had seen the posts and at first believed them. But now, they were seeing through the act. A few even apologized for assuming the worst about me. Meanwhile, Emily's family stood by me completely. Her parents had already heard the whole story. But when they saw the Facebook drama, they reassured Emily that I didn't owe my family anything. They told her that cutting off toxic people, even family, was sometimes necessary. Then, one day at work, my boss pulled me aside. I was expecting something serious. Instead, he just leaned against his desk, smirking. "Damn," he said. "They're really trying hard, huh?" I didn't even need to ask what he was talking about. Apparently, my dad had sent another email. This time, he tried to claim I was stealing from the family, that I had abandoned my responsibilities and wasn't to be trusted. My boss didn't even take it seriously. He just laughed and deleted it. Meanwhile, my family's financial situation was getting worse. Without my financial help, my parents started scrambling. First, they maxed out their credit cards. Then my dad took out a high-interest loan that only buried them deeper. His latest investment, some shady real estate deal, flopped, leaving them on the verge of foreclosure. They tried borrowing from other relatives, but by then, everyone had caught on. They had nowhere left to turn. Then, the karma hit my sister. Since I had cut her off, she started asking friends for money. Some helped at first, but then she kept asking. Eventually, people got tired of it. One by one, they started ignoring her. Then, my mom unblocked me. Not to apologize, not to check in, just to send another guilt trip email. "I was there when you were little," she wrote. "I took care of you. I don't understand how you can turn your back on me now." I didn't respond. I didn't even read the whole message. I just deleted it. Instead, I focused on something else. I started therapy. For years, I had carried around guilt. I had felt like I owed them something, like I had to be the responsible one, the one who fixed everything. Therapy made me realize the truth. I had been raised to feel like I was never enough. Like no matter what I did, it was my job to keep my family together. Now, I didn't have to do that anymore. Then, my younger brother messaged me again. He told me he was thinking about moving out, that he was tired of the way they controlled him, that he was starting to realize how messed up everything was. Then, my dad made his final move. He publicly disowned me. A long, dramatic Facebook post about how I had betrayed the family, about how I had become heartless, about how he no longer considered me his son. I didn't react. I didn't comment. I didn't respond. I just moved on. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. A year has passed since I cut off my family. No more guilt tripping. No more demands. No more chaos. And my life. It's never been better. I got a big promotion at work. A major raise. Something that would have been impossible before, back when I was constantly stressed about my family. When I was always bracing for the next phone call, the next guilt trip, the next financial demand. Now, I focus on my own life. Emily and I moved in together. No more separate apartments. No more juggling different schedules. Just our own space, our own peace. Meanwhile, my parents finally ran out of money. First, they fell behind on mortgage payments. Then they tried refinancing, but their credit was too wrecked. Desperation kicked in. My dad even took out a payday loan just to cover monthly bills. It wasn't enough. The foreclosure notice arrived a few months later. They had no savings, no backup plan. Just a sinking ship with no one left to bail them out. Not just almost lost it, actually lost it. They had to move into a small apartment in a cheaper part of town. My dad had burned through every last option. Loans, fake business ventures, family handouts, and without me bailing them out, it was over. And my sister, still struggling, still posting passive-aggressive things online, still complaining about betrayal and fake family members. But fewer people care now. At first, she had an audience. She got sympathy. But now, people see through it. They've heard the same story for too long. Even mutual friends have stopped responding. Then, out of nowhere, my younger brother broke free. He got his own job, moved out, cut contact with our parents. Not fully, not yet, but he's limiting it. For the first time, he's realizing he doesn't have to be trapped, that he can live his own life. Then, a surprise message. One of my aunts reached out, someone who had taken my parents' side in the beginning. She apologized. She admitted she had been wrong about me, that she had believed their lies at first. But now, she saw the truth. I didn't expect that, but I also didn't need it, because for the first time, I don't feel guilty anymore. Then, one final attempt. My mom, a single message, no guilt trips, no demands, just one sentence. Can we talk? I ignored it. No response, no hesitation, just peace. Because now, I don't just feel free. I feel happy. Therapy has helped. I've learned to set boundaries, to prioritize myself, to understand that I was never the problem. And now, I can finally laugh about it. Emily and I joke about how my family's schemes completely backfired, about how instead of manipulating me back in, they pushed me out for good. The end of an era. I don't define myself by their actions anymore. I've built real relationships, real friendships, people who care about me without expecting anything in return. Because family isn't just about blood, and the cycle of abuse and manipulation, it's over, for good. Out of nowhere, a formal letter arrived in the mail, thick envelope, expensive-looking paper, a lawyer's name at the top. My dad rarely talked about his own father, and when he did, it was with resentment. He claimed my grandfather never supported him, never believed in his business ideas. I barely knew the man, just a few awkward holiday visits as a kid. But I always got the sense he saw right through my dad's schemes, not my mom's dad, who I had met a few times growing up. This was my dad's father, a man I had barely spoken to in my entire life. I opened the letter. It was an official notice. My grandfather had passed away, and apparently, he had left everything to me. Not my dad, not my sister, not even my younger brother. Me. I called the lawyer. Verified everything. The will was airtight. My grandfather had made sure that the inheritance would go exclusively to me, and it wasn't a small amount. It was a 7-figure sum. I had no idea why, until the lawyer told me the truth. My grandfather had been watching, not in a creepy way, just keeping tabs over the years. He had seen what my parents did to me, how they treated me like an outsider, how they used me for money, and then discarded me. And he had disapproved. He never liked how my father handled money, never trusted him. He had seen the financial chaos, the endless get-rich-quick schemes, and when he saw how I had broken away, how I had built a life on my own without help, that was what convinced him. So, he left everything to me, and my family had no idea, until they found out. I don't know how they found out. Maybe someone in the family leaked it. Maybe they noticed something online. I found out later that my aunt had been the one to spill the news. She had overheard a conversation between the lawyer and another relative, and within hours word spread like wildfire. My mom called her first, demanding to know if it was true, and from there, the chaos began. But the moment they knew, everything exploded. My mom started calling nonstop, message after message after message, sobbing, begging, saying I had such a kind heart and that she knew I would do the right thing and share with the family. Then came my dad. He sent a rage-fueled email. He called the inheritance stolen money, said it rightfully belonged to the family, that I was taking what wasn't mine, and that I had no right to keep it. Then, my sister, unhinged. She didn't ask. She demanded. She told me it was only fair to split it, because she was struggling and had a new baby on the way. And my younger brother, he didn't attack me. He just looked exhausted. He told me he didn't expect anything, but my parents were pressuring him to beg me for money. Then, the public meltdown started. My sister ran to Facebook. She called me a snake, a liar, a backstabber. She twisted the story, said that I had secretly taken family money and refused to share. Her post blew up. The same people who had been backing off, the ones who had started seeing through her lies, they jumped back in. How could he do that to his own parents? That's family money. Greed changes people. Then, the legal threats started. My parents threatened to sue. They claimed the inheritance should have been divided, that I had no right to keep it all. I called my lawyer. He shut it down immediately. The will was airtight. Legally, they had no claim. They could try to fight it, but it would go nowhere. Then, I blocked them all, again, but the stress was still there. The harassment, the pressure, the constant online attacks. One night, Emily and I joked about leaving the country, just packing up and disappearing. No social media, no updates, just gone. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time I could. Instead, I made my final decision. I wasn't giving them a cent, not because I was spiteful, not because I wanted revenge, because I was done. Instead of feeding their chaos, I put the money toward my own future. I started investing, bought a dream home, secured financial stability for life, And my family, they were left exactly where they had put themselves. The inheritance fiasco was the last straw. The threats, the harassment, the public meltdowns. I had reached my limit. It wasn't enough to just block them again. This time, I needed to make sure they couldn't reach me at all. I called my lawyer. A formal cease and desist letter was drafted and sent to my parents and sister. It laid everything out in clear legal terms. Any further harassment, threats, or defamation would result in immediate legal action. No more guilt trips. No more begging. No more lies. They had been warned. For a few weeks, silence. No calls. No emails. No social media drama. Then, my mother tried one last sob story. A handwritten letter arrived in the mail. Not a legal threat. Not a demand. Just a plea. She just wanted to talk. She missed her son. She wanted to make things right. I didn't respond. Then my dad lost it. A new phone number. A furious voicemail. Full-on rage. Screaming about how I had ruined the family. How I had destroyed everything. How I had forgotten where I came from. Blocked. Again. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. Therapy had changed everything. One session, my therapist said something that finally clicked. They were never going to change. Only you could break free. And I did. With no more chaos in my life, I could finally focus on what mattered. Emily and I started traveling. We saw places I had only ever dreamed of. Italy, Japan, Australia. No interruptions. No sudden family emergencies.